Good evening and welcome to Hairenik Media's weekly newscast. I'm Ani Zargarian, presenting this week's top stories. Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan has sparked outrage and concern following comments about the Armenian Genocide that many say align with Turkish denialist rhetoric. Speaking to the Armenian community in Switzerland, Pashinyan questioned why the genocide only became a national issue in the 1950s, seemingly ignoring historical facts. The truth is, the Armenian Genocide was internationally recognized well before the 1950s. The Istanbul trials of 1919 to 1920 held Ottoman officials accountable, and organizations like the American Committee for the Independence of Armenia advocated for justice. Critics argue that Pashinyan's remarks dangerously echo Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who has called for moving past fabrications rather than recognizing historical truth. The only parties questioning the Armenian genocide today? Turkey, Azerbaijan, and the Pashinyan administration. Armenia's prime minister's comments provoked a storm of criticism across Armenia and the diaspora from multiple national and religious institutions, political groups, historians, civil society organizations, and others. In response to Pashinyan's comments, the Mother See of Holy Echmiadzin reaffirmed its stance on the genocide, which it says has been an integral part of the Church's religious and national identity for over a century. The statement highlighted that the creation of the Zizernagapert Memorial, constructed in 1967, and the canonization of the genocide martyrs in 2015 are the embodiment of our nation's collective will to honor and condemn this horrific event, and that the Armenian genocide is not only a crime against the Armenian people, but also a crime against humanity, and recognition of the genocide is a moral and historical imperative for both Armenia and the international community. His Holiness Aram I, Catholicos of the Great House of Kilikia, urged Pashinyan not to make the undeniable fact that the Armenian genocide was masterminded by the Ottoman Empire a subject of discussion. His Holiness stated that the planning and execution of the Armenian genocide were carried out by the Ottoman Empire and should not be subject to debate, warning that such an approach plays into the enemy's hands. Former Foreign Minister Vartan Oskanyan, who was a vocal critic of Pashinyan, accused the latter of parroting Turkey's continuing denial of the genocide. Another former foreign minister, Ara Ayvazyan, likewise decreed the beginning of the denial of our national tragedy. The Lemkin Institute for Genocide Prevention also criticized the prime minister, saying that Pashinyan is helping Turkey deny the genocide. The institute called Pashinyan's remarks denialist rhetoric and warned of its dangerous consequences. The Armenian National Committee International, in a statement, accused Pashinyan of denying the genocide, stating that his comment on Armenian genocide directly aligns with the genocide denial narratives promoted by the Turkish government and misinformation campaigns that are actively levied against recognition efforts in various countries. While the Prime Minister is hiding behind the pretext of simply seeking more information, the mere questioning conceals a deeper layer of twisting reality and continued attempts of concessions for Turkey, the statement added. President of the European Armenian Federation for Justice and Democracy, Kaspar Karapetyan, expressed his disappointment for the Prime Minister's actions, describing the latter statement as irresponsible and shameful, and stating that engaging in this type of genocide denial and historical revisionism is dangerous to an almost criminal degree. After becoming the target of harsh criticism for his statements in Switzerland, where he denied the Armenian genocide, Pashinyan tried to correct himself during a press conference and made an even bigger mistake when he declared that he had meant something completely different. Now let's go to Washington, D.C., where Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan is visiting the U.S. Capitol. The AYF Youth Organization of the ARF has taken action, reminding the Prime Minister of his failures. We have Vartkes Pambukyan, chair of the AYF DC Ani chapter, joining us from DC. Hello, Vartkes.
Padavani, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here with us. What is the AYF doing in response to Pashinyan's visit to DC?
So, as long as Pashinyan continues to concede land and promote policies threatening the security and very independence of the homeland, he is unwelcome in DC. The AYF and DC Armenian youth are here to make sure that message is clear throughout his visit. The AYF always stands with the people of Armenia and Artsakh, fighting for the justice that we all deserve as Armenians.
How do young Armenian Americans view Pashinyan's performance as the prime minister in Armenia?
Well, Ani, if I were to say, from my perspective as a U.S. citizen, and a member of the diaspora, I think Pashinyan's time as prime minister and what he's been doing as prime minister is absolutely unacceptable. I mean, and from what I've seen with other youth within the local community or the region or in the U.S. in general, everyone's disappointed in what he's been doing, what he's been saying, whether it be about Armenian policies, um, you know, um, how like making better ties with Turkey, Azerbaijan, whatever it may be. His lack of assistance towards the displaced Artsakh is unacceptable as well. His performance of getting our POWs back home is also an unacceptable act as prime minister.
What message do you want to deliver to Pashinyan and our communities?
So, Ani, the message we want to deliver to our communities and to Nikol himself is Armenia is not Nikol's to sell or barter. His aiding and abetting the Artsakh genocide, denial of the Armenian genocide, and abandonment of Armenian prisoners in Baku is unacceptable. When the Pashinyan government fails the Armenian people, it is our duty to stand up and stand strong, united for Armenian justice.
Thank you, Vartkes. Vartkes Pambukyan is from the AYFDC Ani chapter. Thanks again.
Thank you and good week.
Why are you here?
As a descendant of Armenian genocide survivors, I refuse to forget my history.
Why are you here?
I'm here to demand the right of return of Artsaksis to their homes.
I'm here because we haven't forgotten the refugees of Artsakh, even though Pashinyan has.
As Armenians worldwide commemorated Armenian Army Day, the nation paid tribute to the courage and dedication of its defenders who safeguard the homeland and preserve peace. Members of the parliamentary Armenia faction visited the Yerevan military pantheon and laid flowers at the graves of the heroes. Responding to the reporters' questions, the head of the Armenia faction, Seyran Ohanyan, stated that the Armenian army has traveled a glorious path, and thanks to the Armenia Diaspora Artsakh Trinity, we were able to build our army. He expressed confidence that when the people rise up, the army will regain its past glory. In turn, MP Garnik Danielyan emphasized that today the Yerevan authorities are pursuing a denialist policy towards the genocide, an absurdity against which we are forced to fight in order to preserve our identity and Armenianness. A military court in Baku has denied a motion to place former Artsakh leaders under illegal detention. The court ruled that figures including Arkady Gugasyan, Bako Sahakyan, and Araik Harutyunyan must remain in prison. Meanwhile, former State Minister Ruben Vardanyan faces a separate trial. Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan has alleged that Azerbaijani authorities are using illegal interrogation methods to extract testimony, potentially to incite further regional tensions. Baku has denied these claims, insisting the trials are fair. With proceedings set to resume on February 8, international pressure is growing. The Canadian government has taken a firm stance on the ongoing humanitarian concerns surrounding Armenia's detained in Baku. In a letter addressed to the Armenian National Committee of Canada, ANCC, Foreign Minister Melanie Joly condemned Azerbaijan's aggressive rhetoric and ongoing trials against Armenian prisoners of war and ethnic Armenians arbitrarily detained in Azerbaijan, and called for several key actions. the immediate and unconditional release of all Armenian prisoners of war and detainees, respect for Armenia's sovereignty and territorial integrity, the safe and dignified return of displaced Armenian civilians to their ancestral lands, and the protection of Armenian cultural heritage, and the resolution of the Artsakh issue through the OSCE Minsk Group process, in line with the Helsinki Principles and the need for a just and durable peace in the South Caucasus. The Armenian National Committee of Canada welcomed Minister Jolie's position, noting that it aligns with the organization's political priorities. This collaboration highlights the role of diaspora communities in shaping foreign policy and ensuring that international attention remains focused on unresolved conflicts and human rights violations. Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev has continued to press forward with his territorial demands, particularly the establishment of a Zangezur corridor, a proposed land passage connecting Azerbaijan to its Nakhichevan exclave through Armenian territory. Aliyev has framed this as an issue of national security, stating that Azerbaijan must have free access for transportation and economic development. Aliyev told the press, "This is not an issue that Armenia can decide unilaterally. We will take practical steps to ensure the establishment of this corridor, with or without Armenia's approval." Meanwhile, Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan, in a meeting with Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Kobakhidze, who was in Armenia on a working visit, presented the latest developments in the normalization of Armenia-Azerbaijan relations, as well as the ongoing border delimitation process between the two countries. The Prime Minister noted that an agreement has been reached to begin the next stage of border demarcation in the immediate vicinity of the Armenia-Georgia-Azerbaijan interstate border crossing point. Now let's go to our correspondent in Yerevan, Nare Navassartian, for the latest on Armenia's domestic developments. Hi, Nare.
Hi, Annie.
Nare, in the past few days, we've been hearing news about Artsakh Armenian arrested in Yerevan for sharing a video. What can you tell us about this issue?
Yes, a few days ago, there was a video of people of Azerbaijani descent from Iran who were dancing and singing a song dedicated to Karabakh on Republic Square in Armenia. And of course, this, given the occupation of Armenia, is a very sensitive topic. And the video, it went viral. It became widely circulated, especially in nationalist circles. And a few people even called the police, even they called the NSS, demanding that they do an investigation, finding out if these people were somehow related to Baku and were doing their political order. But this concern back of citizens really backfired because they actually detained the citizen, the Artsakhi citizen, 70-year-old Khari Babayan, who had originally put this video on his page. And he is a well-respected educator, and he is a scientist, and he is very well known in all nationalist circles. So this detainment caused a big outrage, and everyone started going. The detainment was at 10:30, and the court even they gave this order for his arrest. And it was a really emotional moment for everyone. People even started closing the nearby highway, and everyone was just gathering there, demanding that he is released. And in the end, the judge did. There was a decision. The court declined his arrest, and he was released. But there were restrictions put on his freedom of speech, and he was put under administrative surveillance. And this, again, according to a recent statement by the Armenian Center for Political Rights, this was another use of this law to silence the political criticism, because actually Babayan had not even his post contained no elements of hate speech, no incitement of violence whatsoever. In fact, he had merely criticized the police and those corrupt scumbags in power who had allowed Armenia to become a state where Azerbaijanis feel so comfortable singing about Karabakh. And actually, it should be noted that the accusation was not for actual inciting intolerance or violence, but it was rather for inciting intolerance against the Armenian authorities and against the police, which cannot be put under the hate speech category because one's political views or affiliations cannot be a protected category like race or faith or any of these other things that people can change that are protected categories. So this is yet another example of the Pashinyan regime creating an atmosphere where even people posting freely on social media about their concerns, and as an Artsakhi, posting about people of Azerbaijani descent singing about Karabakh. This is something that everyone should feel free to do, given how they were forcibly displaced from there and ethnically cleansed. Even this appears to be no longer protected under Pashinyan regime.
Thank you for elaborating on this topic. Nare, what are the latest developments regarding the changes to the tax code?
Recently, there have been a number of changes to the tax code, and small and medium-sized business owners were recently protesting these changes. Especially important was the doubling of the turnover tax, which went from 5% to 10%. But these tax changes were not the only thing concerning the protesters. They were also concerned about the transport fee or garbage collection fee increase. They noted the indifference of the government, how they don't really want to come and find out what exactly they're protesting about. And as a result of this, they also mentioned how those who are in charge now who are making these decisions also cast doubt on the Armenian genocide. So where does their authority really come from? As a result of this, clashes with the police started, and activist Vahagan Chakhalyan and a few others were detained.
Nare, tell us about the public transport fare hike and transportation fare boycott.
Actually, the price was supposed to triple. For one trip, it was supposed to go from 100 rams to 300 rams. But noting the wide public dissatisfaction with such a huge hike, the mayor of Yerevan, Armenian, decided to take a step back and made the trip cost 150 drams, which is significantly lower. But despite this, the opposition factions, especially those in the Council of Elders of Yerevan, continued with their boycotts, and Hayastan-Dashing MPs were also with the citizens raising awareness in the buses and everywhere else in public transportations, encouraging people to boycott this hike. And notably, there were a little differences in approaches, where Haik Marutyan encouraged citizens to pay the old fare of 100 drams, but Tevanyan with Mair Hayastan faction encouraged and called for them to boycott fares entirely and travel for free. And a lot of students joined the protests and a lot of workers, and it would have a wave reaction usually if you would have a few people on the bus boycotting, then everybody else would join.
Thank you, Nare Navasartyan, our correspondent in Armenia.
Thank you, Ani.
In international affairs, European Union High Representative for Foreign Affairs Kaya Kallas is set to visit Armenia in the coming weeks. Deputy Foreign Minister Barut Hovanesyan confirmed the visit, stating that discussions will focus on cooperation between Armenia and the European Union. While further details remain unclear, the visit signals continued EU engagement in the region. The European Union mission in Armenia, in a statement, said it remains committed to security in the region. Marcus Ritter, head of the EU mission in Armenia, joined the Martuni patrol unit to monitor the situation along the Armenian-Azerbaijani border. The EU mission's mandate in Armenia has been extended for another 2 years, until February 19, 2027. The mission's observation zone extends along the entire length of the Armenian-Azerbaijani border, including the Nakhichevan sector. The Armenian Ministry of Defense has denied reports claiming a Turkish unmanned aerial vehicle violated Armenia's airspace. The allegations, which spread rapidly on social media, included a video allegedly showing the drone over Gyumri. The ministry dismissed these reports as false, raising concerns over the reliability of the claims and whether the current administration considers such flights violations of Armenian sovereignty. Deputy Foreign Minister of Russia, Mikhail Galuzin, summoned Azerbaijan's ambassador, Rahman Mustafayev, for a meeting, emphasizing the importance of maintaining Russian-Azerbaijani relations in the spirit of strategic partnership and alliance, based on the declarations signed at the highest level on February 22, 2022. In this context, concern was expressed over the series of anti-Russian publications in Azerbaijani media, as well as a disinformation campaign targeting the Russian house in Baku. The accusations made in these materials are entirely unfounded, the Russian Foreign Ministry stated. French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot condemned Azerbaijan's alleged attempts to destabilize France's national policy in New Caledonia, calling for these interferences to cease immediately. The Baku group has once again tried to destabilize our national political life in New Caledonia. These futile attempts by Azerbaijan in our overseas territories are unacceptable and must stop immediately, Barrot stated. The Armenian community in Abkhazia faces a growing crisis, with estimates ranging from 41,900 to 67,000 Armenians making up as much as 31% of the population. They are now at risk of persecution. Reports indicate that Abkhazian opposition figures with alleged ties to Turkish nationalists and intelligence services are targeting local Armenians. Blacklists, threats, and potential acts of violence are feared. The community has even appealed to the Armenian government to intervene. Concerns are growing over whether Turkey is playing a direct role in this escalating situation. Save the Ark co-founders Setrak Balyan and Hagop Jernazyan brought the plight of Jerusalem's Armenian Christian quarter to Capitol Hill in Washington's policy circles last week, drawing urgent attention to the existential threats facing the 1,700-year-old Armenian Christian presence in the Holy Land. The Armenian National Committee of America, as a service to American stakeholders committed to the sanctity of the Holy Land, accompanied Balyan and Jernazyan during a full day of legislative meetings, a midday Capitol Hill seminar, and a late afternoon live-streamed update, amplifying their call for U.S. leadership in protecting this sacred pillar of global Christian heritage. This is a pivotal moment for the Armenian quarter of Jerusalem, and it's a fight that resonates far beyond the Old City, said ANCA Policy Director Alex Skalitsky. The efforts of Balyan and Jernazyan to raise awareness here in Washington reflect the broader existential struggle Armenians face against the threat of dispossession, discrimination, displacement, and ethnic cleansing, from Artsakh to Syria and the Holy Land. Their meetings with lawmakers are critical to building the support needed to defend the human rights, religious freedoms, and cultural heritage of Armenians globally. The ANCA has launched a nationwide advocacy campaign alerting the U.S. Congress about threats to the Armenian quarter and sharing concerns raised by U.S.-based advocates for the preservation of this pillar of the Holy Land, urging the Israeli government to ensure fair and transparent legal proceedings for the Armenian community, demanding that the U.S. hold accountable those who commit violent attacks against the Armenian quarter, urging that the U.S. publicly oppose unilateral actions that disrupt Jerusalem's delicate cultural and religious balance, seeking clarity from Israeli authorities regarding the steps they are taking to safeguard Jerusalem's Armenian Christian quarter. Jerusalem is at a tipping point, said ANCA Policy Director Alex Galitsky. Congress must act decisively to prevent the erasure of the Armenian quarter and ensure that this sacred site remains a beacon of coexistence for generations to come. For more information or to join ANCA's advocacy campaign, visit anca.org/Armenian Christian Quarter. In the U.S.-Russia relations, President Donald Trump said his administration has already had very serious discussions with Russia about its war in Ukraine, and that he and Russian President Vladimir Putin could soon take significant action toward ending the grinding conflict. We will be speaking, and I think we'll perhaps do something that'll be significant, Trump told reporters, repeatedly saying that he wouldn't have allowed the conflict to start if he had been in office. On January 27, Deputy Foreign Minister of the Republic of Armenia, Vahan Kostanyan, met with Foreign Minister of the Syrian Arab Republic, Asad al-Shaibani, in Damascus. Kostanyan conveyed Armenia's commitment to strengthening bilateral relations with Syria. The discussions focused on potential areas of cooperation, with Kostanyan reaffirming Armenia's readiness to support Syria in humanitarian initiatives, reform implementation, and other priority programs. That's all for tonight's newscast. Thank you for tuning in. For more updates, follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X. Good night.